All right, we are back. We are back with another late show. This is your host, Young Brando, live from Los Angeles, and Basil is joining me
Thank you.
from the East Coast. Um, you're getting close to midnight there. How does it feel? Do you still have a little bit more
Yeah, I
energy?
think I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm a night person by nature, but semi-early mornings make me a kind of like an early semi early night person. So, but I'll be good for a little while longer.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it also in the background too, but right at the end of the unboxing that we just did, where Basil shared with us beautiful Hoya Carrera reissue. Right, this one right here. Yeah, it looks perfect right there. And I was saying I'm always fascinated to see the movement in other people's collections because I get things and then they're there for life, and then they're there for a decade, even longer in so many cases. And I'm not one to heed, service intervals. I really only take my watches to service and really to the local person I know and work with. And when you have a collection, where you have basically a dozen watches, trust me, even if you don't take them every 3, 4, 5 years, something comes up just about every year. But this was a year where um, I need to get my Explorer 2, the Polar Explorer 2, serviced, 16570. I need the 16710 um, serviced, which is something of a disappointment for me. Again, when you think about my other pieces, I have them usually for 5+ years, and the one I'm wearing now, 1513, I have I haven't had this thing serviced for more than 20 years now, and it still keeps good time. It still keeps ticking. Whatever, right? But so I had those two already. I set them aside, and I can be forgetful. So I'm like, I'm gonna go to my watchmaker today. No, next week. No, maybe the week after. So I'm wearing my Breguet Type 20 um, last week. This is maybe 2, 3 days ago, and I was wearing it on this very thin, uh, Alcantara strap, kind of like an vegan alternative to suede in this particular context, but tying in from um, the motorsports world that we were just talking about. It's the kind of material they use in the interiors of sports cars. So I thought that was the coolest thing and whatever else, but the thing just pops, right?
Wow.
So it fell face first. Once again, no major dings or scratches, but I realized that the chronograph doesn't really work anymore.
Yikes! Yeah.
And of course, I'm stupid, right? So I wore that watch again, and it popped again. Um, this time, this time actually the uh, little chronograph hand from the hour counter at 6 o'clock also flew. So
Yikes!
it's traveling on the dial. All of this is to say that now I have basically three watches that desperately need service. So I think that's gonna cost me a little bit. A little bit. I get a nice rate again from having that sort of sustained relationship with the local watch people, which is something I always cherish on this channel. You know, I don't think that every single watch needs to be sent to the manufacturer for service. You know, most things can be taken care of by your competent, loving and caring local watchmaker. And there's something to, you know, sustaining those relationships, something to supporting that ecosystem, but also having that sort of personal connection. And, you know, I can get picky about certain things as well. So it always helps when you can actually know, see, and even talk with the person you are trusting your watch with, right? I think that's the perfect scenario. But yeah, that being said, I think three pieces all at once. It's the budget is going to feel it this for sure.
Yeah, it's just, sometimes it's just the way things time out, you know, and you know, in a perfect world, things will be kind of spread out a little bit, but at the same time, you know, it's inevitable that things are going to need service, and sometimes things get clumped together, and this just kind of is what it is. And then, you know, going forward, you're going to probably be in good shape. So, and then if not, you know, and if anything's a little astray in the short term from a recent repair, usually there's, you know, some sort of a, you know, warranty, you know, peace of mind that, you know, whatever would be corrected. So it all works out.
No, I mean, look, I can't complain because as I said, this is how I operate, right? As it's the same thing, you know. My mom constantly says, same thing with people. I wanted to say same thing with human beings. You know, as we get older, it's usually not the flu. You know, like you start getting more complicated health problems that need certain kinds of attention. And, you know, a lot of the watches I have, you know, this, people who watch me regularly know this, they are probably the youngest watch is 20 plus years old already in the collection. So, you know, a lot of these things need ideally regular service anyways, you know, if not every 5 years, every 7, every decade. And as I freely admitted to you just now, you know, I have pieces in my collection that I really cherish, but that I hadn't taken to my watchmaker for, you know, more than a decade in certain cases. So when you accumulate a certain number of pieces, and I'm right at that, you know, dirty dozen right now, it just happens. You know, every year something comes up, even if it's not major. And then add to that my usual clumsiness. You know the story with my Daniel Roth, right? Did you?
Yeah, when it dropped early on, right? Yeah,
It dropped. I mean, I love that passive expression. It didn't drop. I dropped it. In this case, at least with the Breguet, I wasn't necessarily to blame, except for my vanity of trying to go for a certain strap and an aesthetic and whatever else. But, you know, things add up, and I'm in that situation right now. What is your approach to watch repair? Do you get them serviced often? And who do you choose? You know, where do you send them?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it kind of just reading the timepiece and making sure it's keeping accurate time. Granted, a lot of my pieces tend to be a little bit on the newer side, so usually I've been, you know, like haven't been really too concerned there, like to the point of even many of my pieces are still under a factory warranty. Though, you know, there's been cases where a couple of pieces where I've had kind of given a third party once over where not necessarily service, but if they were just slightly oiled or what have you, just kind of going over to make sure things were good and seals were fine and so on. That's kind of been a little bit of what I've been mindful of is when acquiring a piece that authenticity is one thing, but also right that the actual the piece is still kind of in good knack and that I'm gonna be happy for a while. And if it needs anything, then I'm not shy. Like even to the point where my Datejust is actually approaching its kind of final month of warranty, and I actually took it into Rolex to have it serviced, being that there were a couple little things that I felt that weren't 100%, and part of it was me being a little critical, knowing that when Rolex gets it, they'll give it a full once over and make sure it is 100%, so that buys me some time into the future. So I think a little bit of it is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and some of it is if it's new to me and I'm uncertain, having it maybe looked over. So
I think that's one thing that you said. I do take care of that. Watches that I wear on a daily basis and that I get a little more rough with. At least I'm not too precious with them. I do get them pressure tested and seals and gaskets checked, once a year, every so often. I think that's fair, and that is important. I'm not. It's not like I'm showering with a vintage Submariner, or
right.
I'm actually going into the ocean or something. But that being said, I think especially as these pieces get older, or alternatively, if you are generally active with them, in the sense that if you are wearing your diver more than just watering the backyard and washing the dishes, it is nice to have those kinds of personal relationships with your local watch people, with your local watchmaker, where you can just take it in and say, like, hey, can you check the gaskets? Can you put this through the motions to see if pressure tested, and see if it's still waterproof. I think that's a good thing to do with sports watches, especially.
Yeah, I think that's really half the battle. It's you don't always have to dump money in if things are still sufficient, but it should be kind of verified. And doing so is just just being mindful of what you have, and granted, right, you're saying, like, even if you pass with flying colors, with a Submariner of it being pressure tested and fine, you're probably still not going to quite take it to those limits, even at that. But if you're washing the dishes, or getting a little wet from a rain shower, you're going to be fine. So
Dr. Bob's Nightmare. Hey, man.
Whoa.
See, he says, I got a 25 to 30-year-old Seiko. I check it by jumping in the river every year. Why not? I mean, again, if that's the way you want to wear it, if that's the way you want to enjoy it, I don't think I wouldn't have anything against that. But it only needs to happen once when it comes to water leaking in to it. And by the way, with especially with complicated vintage watches, like chronographs and calendar and whatever else, from say, the early part of the 20th century, right? There's so many points where you can have water and humidity ingress depending on the climate you live. Sometimes even you have to, you're obliged to be precious with them. You have to limit the times and days you can actually wear them out and enjoy them. You have to keep them a certain way, in a temperature adjusted room, etc. So it's not like air conditioned. You do have to be careful if you want to keep things a certain way, and that's why the oyster case has been also so successful, beyond just being iconic and a registered trademark and whatever else. When you just on average, as a rule of thumb, when you're really scavenging or looking for vintage watches in a committed way, almost always you will see that a Rolex watch of a certain vintage would be in better shape than another. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Patek or AP or whatever else. It can be another sports watch of a similar vintage, simply because it's they have gotten that waterproof, dustproof, humidity-proof aspect of their watches with that oyster case design pretty early on, and that's a legacy that carries forward, right? For the average person who wears these watches on a daily basis, they're just so much more difficult to destroy, so much more difficult to really damage in that particular way. And I mean, I think I could probably categorize Seiko in a similar category as well. They can certainly take a beating and don't necessarily. I haven't really experienced a lot of water or humidity ingress with Seiko pieces that I've been wearing for years, in certain cases longer than a decade. So they might not be the best chronometers, so to speak, when it comes to Seiko. At the entry level, Seiko is not the best, most precise timekeeper. Right. Let's put it this way. But they're certainly workhorses for sure.
Yeah, I think really with Rolex, what to kind of add to, yes, like that oyster case, is really just super tight, durable, rugged. I think it's just people really, they're looked at as like that heirloom piece where people are typically going to stay on top of service, and they paid a lot for it, they want it to last, so they want to hand it down. And it's been this way, for many, many years, and they're getting the service, they're getting the love they need to stand that test of time, in addition to them inherently also being a nice, sturdy, rugged watch. So they definitely got a lot going for them.
Yeah, I think, I haven't thought about that. You're right. I mean, it has something to do with how people wear them as well. But I think by and large, people like Rolex is one kind of watch that people a lot of times wear with a certain kind of abandon, because they know it can take a beating, even when it's a heirloom piece.
Yeah, no, we've seen it. Like, there's been some really cool restorations of people that they were just, blue collar people that they really just wore it every day, and they got really beat up, and from disassembly to reassembly, and you kind of just seeing it bit by bit of what kind of transpired, but the watch was working up probably to the point of the service, which exactly that. Yeah, they're getting, and
Yeah.
you know, in addition to kind of getting the love from people, they are taking a beating, and they're not at the point of it. You know, they're definitely, you know, far from a fast fashion. It's, you know, something that is worth the money of getting repaired, and at the same time is able to withstand up until that repair. So definitely, you know, definitely this sounds true there.
And that's almost like I mean, it's a genre of video on YouTube as well, like watch restorations. You know, I restored this 40-year-old Rolex, and you would have this kind of before and after juxtaposition. I like those. I like those as well. This is the awesome Pawan High Lord and Basil's.
Wow.
It's been a while. It's been a while. So see a nice pilot's chrono there. I think that's the 41 on the bracelet with the green dial. Green dial. You like green, Basil?
I do.
Right?
I do. Yeah, definitely do.
It's still it's funny how the watch world goes through these cycles of, you know, hype colors on dials, you know, all different shades of blue, of course. The green seems to be still quite popular. Salmon and different shades of pink started coming in, you know, maybe not as ubiquitous as some of these sportier and, you know, traditionally masculine colors, but basically every brand has one or two watches that have salmon, copper, and pink tones as an option for sure.
Oh, big time. Yeah. No, I've noticed that. Yeah, they usually, that's the thing. I mean, I think as collectors, we appreciate kind of those different hits of colors too, because most watches we're going to see black and white dials for the, you know, the primary pieces in a collection, and then there might be some blues, and then green was kind of that first, not the first, but it's just a good example of something that is a little outside of that color palette, and works well. It's, you know, just a nice collection. And then to add to that, yeah, I mean, yeah, something like a copper, you know, a nice salmon, you know, those pops of colors, they're just fun. You know, it gets boring when it's just like just the vanilla kind of colors.
Yeah, this is something that I posted. Speaking of salmon dials, a few days back on Instagram. I also dropped the link there. You did you watch Succession?
You know, I did not know.
Oh, you did not. Okay, so this is Matthew Macfadyen, who plays Tom Wamsgans, who marries into the family, and is this kind of average Midwestern American guy, and he has a very interesting journey, very interesting trajectory with his character overall. And Hoff and I were talking about it in the comments here, where he starts, you know, in the first few seasons, he wears a Cartier just like his wife, you know, who belongs to that, you know, Roy family. And then in the last season, where he starts gaining some of his autonomy and kind of breaks off from his wife and starts kind of pursuing his own ends a little bit, he starts wearing this AP Royal chronograph. But it turns out that he's the actor, Matthew Macfadyen, is himself a watch guy. And in a recent photo shoot, he was wearing this Patek 5172G with the salmon dial, this number right here, which I really like. I think this particular one, I actually like it better in blue, but this is quite sexy as well.
Oh, big time.
I mean, I also thought that this was a cool, um, cool way of kind of breaking some of the stereotypes a little bit, because sometimes you imagine these sorts of, you know, copper tones, shades of pink, maybe on a very elegant dress watch, which, I mean, this can be. It's a hand wound chronograph with just two registers, right? You know, it can play that game too. Um, but certainly, you know, the way he wears it here looks perfectly casual and elegant at the same time. I really like it with that um, chambray shirt and the suede jacket. It's a nice combo.
Yeah, no, it does flow very, very well. I have to say, you know, with like the tans to the, you know, that copper, probably, you know, with the leather, you know, the brown leather, you probably match up with some brown leathers from a belt to some shoes, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I don't think JJ has it anymore, but he had this version, if I'm not mistaken, at some point.
Yeah,
This,
that blue is nice.
I love the syringe hands, honestly.
Yeah,
I really do. I like the precursor of this reference to the 5170 that was maybe a little more classic looking. You know, it was like leaf shaped hands, and it had a pulsometer as the scale rather than a tachometer, as is the case here. So, you know, kind of a doctor's watch vibe
right.
rather than this. And I also like the throwback quality they're going for here. Of course, it's powered by their in-house hand-wound CH29 base, but they went with those round pushers with the conical tops and the guilloche decoration, which is just like the classic reference 1463, what they call the tasti tondi. I mean, yeah, the only thing, if I really were to nitpick, I feel like the lugs are a little too precious for my taste. Like a single step would have been probably better. But yeah, I can't complain. I think overall the design flows pretty nicely.
Yeah, no, it's sharp. Yeah, I agree with you on the blue. You know, as much as you know the kind of those the salmons, the coppers, they're kind of like special colors. Like I don't know when a blue is done well. Yeah, I like how it's you know pairing it with that strap too. It really does flow very nice.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, you know, when it comes down to it. I mean, yeah, you have known me long enough, so you must have caught me talking shit about contemporary Patek at least a few times by now. So I do think sometimes they're trying too hard to look cool, to look sporty, to look youthful. Um, but sometimes, you know, just matching a certain dial color with a nice strap with contrast stitching, that's enough. You know, you don't have to try too hard. You don't have to go for unusual textures on the dial and carbon fiber inspiration and whatever
Right.
else. Um, you know, sometimes having contrast stitching on a color coordinated strap is sporty enough. Really, you don't have to try too hard. And I think this is the right measure of cool for Patek. Anything else veers into that territory of the Steve Buscemi meme. You know, how are you doing,
Skateboard,
power
right?
crew?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I like this watch. I think it should be a decent enough deal also on the secondary market. I haven't checked it for a while now, but
It's definitely it's a buyer's market. You know, it really it can be. You know, and you know, there's always going to be pieces that are going to fetch higher than retail, or even way higher than retail. But I think some of those really just great respectable pieces that might not quite have the same cachet as the real heavy hitters, you're gonna find some deals, and I think it's only probably gonna get a little stronger too. So
yeah, 50, 55 and below. There's a couple listed that way. I'm also a huge fan of the 5960. In all the different ways. I mean, it's let me see. This will help us a little. I mean, obviously, like everybody else, I really like the stainless steel versions, but I'm also a huge fan of the white gold one, which again aims for a similar aesthetic, right? You have again, like this time, a brown calfskin leather strap with contrast stitching paired with a blue dial. And you also have those pushers with the same guilloche decoration. A simpler case, great combination of complications, between the annual calendar and the self-winding chronograph with the flyback function. Like, this is a great reference. And I think still, like, when it comes to Patek, it's decent value. Another favorite that I have is the 5930. Again, 5935A, which came out with a salmon dial and in stainless steel. That has a larger case. I think these were just perfect in terms of the proportion of it. Another nice blue dial with Patek. Again, you get kind of the best of both worlds kind of thing, with classic Patek complication with world time, 24 hour, 24 cities ring. And once again, the automatic chronograph with the flyback capability.
yeah, I think a lot of people, you think of your Aquanaut, your Nautilus, and then you think of like your Calatrava on the other end of the spectrum of like getting into the brand, but clearly there's just so much more to it than that.
I think, yeah, on the secondary market, that again, we're still talking about a good $50,000, right? That's not a chump change by any means. Don't take me wrong, but you mentioned Calatrava. Now, a lot of Calatravas at retail are already quite up there, right?
Right.
40, um, 35, $40 and 40,000 and plus in certain cases. So when you think of that, to get something that's complicated, that has maybe a little more visual interest than a Calatrava, and also kind of a sporty, cool look. It's a different genre, to be sure, right? I mean, if you are genuinely looking for a Calatrava, you're not looking for flash. You're not really looking for bells and whistles. You're looking for something that's simple, elegant, an expression of classic horological design, whatever else. Again, I have presented my cynical view before as well, that I have basically, I haven't met anyone who has bought Calatrava at retail for the sake of buying a Calatrava at retail. I know, it's controversial. I know I'm not in people's heads, and I'm trying to stir shit up a little bit with that. But usually a lot of people who end up buying Calatrava from a Patek authorized dealer or salon are there to get your foot in the door,
Yeah.
start a relationship, start a journey, or whatever else you want to call it, with a certain end game of reaching another point. Now, you might even end up loving it. I don't know. I'm not gonna judge. I like a good dress watch as much as everybody else, but I think it's just there's so many better options on the secondary market when you think of it, that I would rather put my money into something like that rather than investing in a kind of pipe dream. Like a lot of these relationships that authorized dealers, etc., sell you is not always trustworthy. Does not always culminate in watches that you actually want. So you have to be strategic. But hey, I respect Maldives' perspective as someone who is a Patek collector, saying you want your name on the papers.
That's fair.
I never cared about that. What do you think about that, Basil?
For me, there's definitely something there. At the end of the day, though, I probably would just default to the value. Like, if it had a significant premium to have my name on the papers, then I think I'd go with not having my name on the papers, to be fair. It really just comes down to, yeah, just really just kind of the value and the journey of just kind of getting there, So I'm definitely not against it. I definitely appreciate somebody wanting that. You're going to hold on to the piece forever. So in many cases, for a lot of collectors, that's not even the thought process. Is value retention isn't a thing. So I guess it just depends on, it's like a case by case thing, an example, and where you want to be with that piece. So I can kind of see both sides of that argument.
Yeah, we were talking about this a couple of episodes back, actually at Maldives' urging too, kind of like a 3-piece Patek collection that's kind of combines the best of what they have. And on the one hand, if it's a clear path, if they're gonna give you exactly what you want and without making you wait for years and years, I think that that is fair. Um, and in fact, when it comes down to it, as long as I can actually trust the people I'm dealing with, I'm not averse to waiting, for years even, right? If I look, I mean, if I already had an established relationship with a Patek dealer and I applied for a 5740, the Nautilus ultra thin perpetual calendar in white gold, and they can actually deliver it to me in 2 years, I'll wait for that too, and I'm sure that will be worth it. That being said, not every single sales associate at these authorized dealers is as honest, is as trustworthy as you would want. And honestly, yeah, I do understand. I do understand. I mean, if you're getting a Patek perpetual calendar chrono, I don't know, minute repeater, it probably makes sense to look for the opportunity to actually buy it at retail and get your name on the paper. When it comes to some of the watches that I just showed, would I really care? I don't know. I really don't think so. That's not me. I usually look for the value.
It's funny how Rolex has kind of taken name on a warranty card out of the equation.
Right.
Now when you buy it, it's anonymous to a certain degree. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with having Mr. Daisuke Matsubara's old watch. I don't mind.
Yeah.
Give me a good deal.
Yeah, I kind of stand the same. I do value things like warranty cards and original papers and the like. In the case for me, like there's a couple of, I have a Rolex and trying to think. This other actually, that's funny. The box that the watch I unboxed this evening actually did have the gentleman I bought it from name on paper. Um, so it worked out that way. Granted, like in some cases, it's just inevitable if things are you don't have a time machine where you can go back and buy it from as new. So and then you run into that, of course. But yeah, I there's definitely
I think
that argument.
there are also different ways of looking at it, and it has something to do with how you're socialized into the hobby as well, right? If God knows, if my father were alive and I actually grew up, with the experiences of going into the store and buying watches with him, so on and so forth, or if I on my own went into watch collecting as a hobby, buying watches at retail, I can see in an alternate universe where I would perhaps skew towards that, value that experience somehow, have some sort of emotional attachment to also getting my name on the papers and everything. But I'm a vintage watch guy, right? The only way I care about the name on the papers, Basil, and that's a great detail and tie into what we were doing just now with your unboxing with the 70s Hoya Carrera re-edition. It's one thing that you can value is like a one owner watch, right? When you have someone who has bought a watch, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and either they are moving on with it or their families are moving on with it. And my friend Eric Wind of
Yeah.
Wind Vintage. So he almost always focuses these days on selling vintage watches that have that sort of one owner, or at most two owner provenance, right?
Mhm.
Because once it goes through this circuit of the usual suspects, some of the shadier dealers, you don't exactly know what happens to that watch, right? So even for the vintage collector who may or may not care about names on the papers, there is a value associated with having a certain kind of name on the papers. Let's say, Mr. Bezos, and you are moving on with the piece. I know the kind of collector you are. I know how you take care of your watches. But at any rate, I know that this is something that you bought. It stayed with you. If it got serviced, it came back to you, and now you're moving on with it. So the paper trail is there. I know no one else messed with it. I know people didn't try to enhance the watch cosmetically, swap a dial out of it for the sake of something that's maybe more desirable on the market at that point. So having names on the paper and a certain kind of name on the paper, having a one owner watch, is something that still brings a lot of value on table. I think the reason I respect Maldives' opinion. I understand it completely, and I see the value in it. The reason I don't side with that automatically, personally, is because I got socialized into this hobby by buying vintage watches that I could afford. So I cared about condition. I cared about the dial. I cared about, having, the chamfers and a certain kind of aesthetic. I cared about that, not about papers at all, much less my own name. The awesome Pawan prediction: which brands will go bust? I'll be harsh here a little bit. You said Coram, awesome Pawan. I think for a brand to go bust, for a bubble to burst, there has to be a bubble first. So, not to be mean. I don't have anything against the brand Coram, but I think they won't go bust because there's nothing to go bust.
The Admiral's Cup isn't really setting any sales records, right?
No.
Yeah.
Would you do? But by the way, Jonam kept up the good work. Thank you, Patel Philippe, Mr. Tan, 279 Canadian, also a member of the channel. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What would be your prediction, though, Basil? Like
Ooh.
within those parameters, is
Yeah.
there a brand that is hot now, and you think that it's riding on a wave that will soon subside?
Yeah, I think, you got to think like if I were to think of a brand, before I even like maybe pick out a brand, I'd probably go by, you almost like would maybe consider a brand that might not have like the deepest traditions of something that's like relatively maybe new, but maybe not necessarily. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the maybe just the smaller upstart brands that could potentially, trying to think of something. you know it's hard to say. It really is just hard to like, because I look at brands that like I would say, oh, like we'll say like, well, like it would be Hublot, but like not necessarily, because I think they probably sell really well to people that might not necessarily be in the circles that a lot of collectors on YouTube might be frequenting. But I think the average person, kind of like that buyer that just wants that one piece that just kind of says I made it, almost kind of like how Breitling was like back in the day, you
Yeah,
know, like that.
commercially, I think
Mm,
commercially Hublot is doing just fine.
yeah. But probably like something newer. I could almost see like I don't want to even single them out because I actually kind of quite like the brand, but maybe even something like I don't know, like a Zodiac, you know, something that, you know, they're getting a little bit of steam now, but maybe they kind of cool off because a lot of people are doing the same thing with diving watches and it's just a little more of the same. And yeah,
Hmm.
it's really hard to say. I really can't think of one that really speaks to me as kind of like,
I,
you know, this dire street.
I think it's a great question, actually,
Mm, I like,
because of what, you know, kind of the cycles we are going through right now. Because just 2-3 years ago, we were in the thick of that moment, you know, of the post-pandemic craze where the watch industry was perhaps going through one of its best eras, historically speaking,
right.
which gave a lot of shine to, you know, brands of a certain, like mid-sized brands. Let's say you mentioned Zodiac, I can add Oris to that list.
Hmm.
You saw the mushrooming like never before of true independent watchmakers who put their names on the map, you know, beyond, uh, let's say, my Mount Rushmore of Philippe Dufort, Kari Voutilainen, François Paul-Jean, and Recep Recepi, but, you know, people now talk about Simon Pret and Sylvain Pinot and so on and so forth. So it's exactly in this moment, you know, where again some of the bigger brands, like any Richemont owned brand, made it a habit to raise their prices once, twice, 3 times a year. Um, this is the right time to ask, like, you know, where does all of this lead? Because to me, it's clear that, you know, 5-10 years from now, we won't, unfortunately, I don't think we will have all this shine on a lot of the independent makers.
Right.
I think some of those rising stars might be already forgotten by the time we hit the 2030s. Like Raoul Pagès was another one. I think, you know, these names will stay, but some of the other emergent ones might completely disappear.
Or they may even like kind of turn into something else, like kind
Yeah.
of pivot into some other branding
Or maybe merge
merging or buyout.
and pull their sources. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna emerge
Yeah.
from
You
that,
know,
because
one
you're
that came
no,
to
go ahead.
mind
Go ahead. Yeah.
actually, one that came to mind, and actually, I kind of I got a hint like, and it was sad. Like I was like one of the like a Tim Masso like either live stream or video or something. I think it was actually a live stream.
Hmm.
And it was a company that I owned. It's Devon. So Devon, who does
I don't know.
it's a torno shaped watch. It is, you know, quartz powered. You literally put on a charger
Could
to
you
charge. Granted,
could you drop a
it's
link so I can pull it up?
let me see because I'm using my phone. But
Can you spell it out?
DEVON,
Spell it out for me.
DEVON. So they
DE.
do the Devon Shred. So I had a Devon Shred 2 at one time, and they're, you know, it's not cheap. It's like a $15,000 watch, which I did very well. I bought it pre-owned, and I think, you know, Tim also was actually a huge fan of the Devon Shred 1 and did like the Devon Shred 2. And the company, I think, is kind of, I think I don't believe they're producing many or if any watches at this time. So a lot of it's that they may be selling is already stock that's on the market. And this is a company that it seems like, I know there was talks about even like a Tread 3 that never was put into play. But yeah, the Tread 2 is a smaller toner shape. This one is, I know Tim Moss is actually partially the Tread 1. It is quite a large watch actually. The Tread 2 is actually pretty wearable. It's a nice watch. It kind of has, actually I had the Godiva one, which is that brown there. Pretty limited production. Mine was like, it was
I
like
like
single digit.
I
What
like
was
the
that?
branding, Godiva, like the Belgian chocolate.
Like the chocolate. Yeah, they have little play-ins with a lot of the names of their watches, which is smart. And it was a really fun watch to own, and I did very well when I bought it. And in turn, when it was time to sell, I also did well there to the point of, pretty much like a break even or a slight profit in a resell. But yeah, it was something that he kind of almost hinted where I think he was live, and I think he maybe even pulled back the rails of it, not really much kind of coming from this brand in the future. So that might be a brand that might, they're kind of out and they have, a slight online presence still, but yeah, it might not really be a thing down the road.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, again, those are the brands that first come to mind. And that's why I was grilling the Awesome Pawan a little bit, like same thing, we can name Devon, Aventi, Behrens, even,
Oh, yeah.
all these brands that have a certain aesthetic, that do once every so often, at least from my personal perspective, put out watches there that have some appeal. But again, is it fair to say that they had a hype to begin with, that they are, or a shine that
Right.
they will
Yeah.
lose? I think what's the dangerous one. I think Breitling is safe. They have a great leadership right now, but I really feel in the same way that Ulysse Nardin and Gérard Perregaux devolved from Kering, devolved from luxury ownership.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was like about a year ago, right?
I think it's been a couple of years already, but I think in the next decade we can see certain brands break from maybe Swatch Group ownership, maybe Richemont ownership, when they stop being so profitable.
Sure.
And I'm not saying necessarily that is going bust, because when you think of it, those last 2 years have been so much better for Ulysse Nardin and Gérard Perregaux than it has been in the last decade. So sometimes that sort of breaking up from the larger corporate body can be good for a small to mid-sized brand if the people who are leading it really know what they're doing, really know where their strengths are, do genuinely care about the legacy. And again, I have singled out 2 luxury groups. I think that's good enough. I'm not going to single out a couple of brands, but that's one scenario I'm seeing, like, kind of certain brands breaking from that corporate stranglehold, which can be good for them, at least in short term, which can also be disastrous in the way that there are so many legendary Swiss brands from previous golden ages that we don't even remember. I mean, we got so excited that Breitling is going to, the ownership group behind Breitling is going to revive a Universal, in 2 years. But that was a brand that was the shit in the 60s, and then completely disappeared.
Yeah, they went like all quartz and they were gone, right? Like
that can happen. That can happen to the best of them. So that's sort of my prediction. But I think it's like something, like Oris, Norcane, will we see these brands in 10, 20 years? I'm not so sure. But is that a version of going bust again? I think, I don't know. I don't know.
My gut would have said like a Jacob and Co. But they seem to somehow it's just with the jewelry side of the business and just making just very crazy pieces seem to not want to go anywhere.
I think with those boutique brands, the margins are so high, and the numbers they have to actually sell can be
Direct-to-consumer, when you
sometimes
just buy one.
so it's not, they don't even have to sell that many watches. That's that's the brand, that's the unique perspective of Richard Mille, and it's seemingly inimitable success, which brands like Jacob and Co. actually try to imitate or replicate on some level, right? And that's the trend.
Yeah, those
in the
5 times
industry.
they pumped out, but now it's like, well, let's tighten it up and kind of go this route. Makes more sense.
Yeah, and that's the trend in the industry at large as well, even with bigger brands, right? The idea is to sell either the same number or even less watches in terms of the quantity, move perhaps a little less units than the hype we had in the last 2 years, but we'll sell more expensive watches, gem set pieces,
Yep.
precious metal pieces, at least two-tone and bimetal variations. And when it comes to Richard Mille on the one hand, Jacob & Co. in a different way, and even when you think of some of the independent brands that Louis Vuitton is reviving under the premises of La Fabrique du Temps, the numbers they produce on a yearly basis are so low that the commercial strength behind them and the marketing muscle behind them can easily leverage that, and they can churn out millions of dollars and sustain themselves in that way quite quickly. And that also, by the way, that speaks to something that you were saying earlier, that like Louis Vuitton is investing all this money into independent watchmaking and kind of pooling or bringing together certain watchmakers, sometimes for one-off projects, but sometimes for other and perhaps more sustained collaborations in their own lab. A lot of independent watchmakers, since they don't really have all that corporate muscle, etc., behind them for marketing and like very wide-ranging distribution networks, are pooling their resources together and partnering with dealers that are already established in certain markets, right? Sincere Fine Watches, for example, had that whole arm. Now, speaking of the Asian market, as the Asampa one does, I think it's called what? SHH or something. Like they have a couple of branches of it already I think in Singapore and even in Malaysia and Hong Kong, I think. But anyways, they have their haute horlogerie arm now, where they pretty much only sell independents, and they bring direct to customer some of these brands that will never have the financial resources to open a boutique in like a big European city or in a large American metropolitan area. So the industry is adaptable. It has become quite nimble. So that's a good thing about having those luxury groups. The bad thing is the kind of unique sparkle and character of some of the smaller or even mid-sized brands is kind of disappearing.
It makes me wonder too, like I know Parmigiani is a company that may be going through some changes. What the future may hold.
Funny enough, I mean, a lot of people perceive that as perhaps a warning sign. But the interesting thing about Parmigiani is, by the way,
Turning up.
I mean, we know. I have a pretty niche audience myself. Speaking of, like, who can go bust in near future. Most people in my audience would know, but Parmigiani Fleurier is, basically Sandoz Family Foundation putting financial resources behind Michel Parmigiani in the late 90s and building an independent brand. And it was almost never commercially successful, even though they always made very interesting watches, singular design language, always something unique. And I think Basil still has his Tonda 1950 in the collection. Nevertheless, they were never commercially successful until a couple of years ago, where, again, the best purple patch that the industry ever experienced, they also had their integrated bracelet, stainless steel model, Tonda PF, which iterates on that Tonda 1950 design to make it a sportier piece. And that's why they are for sale now, because this is a moment to sell. They have finally become profitable for a change. So it's actually a good time for Parmigiani, better than most of their existence. However, it's also the realization, hey, we have already poured so much money into this business. It has only now become profitable, and who knows what will happen in the next 5 years. So maybe it's time for us to move on. But yeah, that's the big pharma, giving us something back in terms of high horology, and like all good things, it has to come to an end. So they are trying to move on from the entire ecosystem, from the vertically integrated watch manufacturer they built in the Swiss town of Fleurier, where they are neighbors with Chopard's LUC, and of course Beauvais, which operates from its castle on the hill.
Yep. Legendary castle.
Gondog says, great to catch a live stream, real watch talk, and no drama is hard to come by. Yeah, man, I was thinking of some insults to sling Basil's way, but I love him too much to pick on him, and also, he does look pretty intense with with the shaved head and the beard. I think this is a good look, Basil.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
But yeah, I don't have the energy, Gondog. I again, in another universe maybe, but Awesome Pawan was saying Jacob & Co is popular in Middle East and Asia. Look, I mean, again, once you hit that sweet spot, where you have some capital behind you, I don't know where it comes from. I'm not gonna go into it right here. But when it comes to those kinds of brands that have low volume anyways, that sell premium pieces at an insane markup, you put those watches on the wrist of this or that celebrity, you invite, hint, hint, like a whole horde of so-called watch journalists into an all expenses paid trip in Sicily, for 7 to 10 days, I think. You'll generate enough sales to last you for a decade. So beyond even Middle East or Asia, Jacob & Co. is, for better or worse, they're safe and sound. They're not going anywhere.
I mean, that's a company that in the early 2000s, like, really just broke into popular culture. And I was actually talking about this, before, but think of like a lot of big names even today in like the music and entertainment industry. That was a lot of their first watches. Like you think of it like a Pharrell Williams,
right?
That had to have been one of his first high end, timepieces for that time. So, and he's somebody that is still in the game. He has a signature RM. It really kind of speaks to who they kind of were, and even just with a piece that we look at today as kind of like a junk piece. It was made in such a way that it was marketed so well, and today, kind of given a chance and giving some cachet by name. Having a living owner exec to promote it and to keep a lot of those relationships is pretty impressive.
Funny enough, now that you mentioned Pharrell, I kind of like that he has become now one watch guy of sorts, and he always wears that ultra thin Ferrari piece these days, the Recharmil that broke the record for a hot second before Bulgari took it back.
Yeah, they took it back. Yep.
But I kind of love the fact that he kind of wears this as one watch. Whenever he's photographed publicly these days, whether he is doing a show as the design director for men's Louis Vuitton, or also connected to that, he was courtside at Roland Garros, and he was wearing this one. It's funny. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of this particular watch, and I kind of also thought that they were being a little too smart, since the watch, you have to use a key of sorts to wind the watch. I thought that was a trick, to slim down the watch in an undeserved way. But yeah, it's kind of cool, frankly, for Pharrell to constantly wear this. And saying that, I also realize, right, that Jacob & Co. got its first shine by being on the wrists of people like Jay-Z, like Pharrell, like Rihanna, like Beyonce. So it does that sort of sprinkling of celebrity stardust. It does matter. We like to think as the more as the geekier, nerdier arm of this hobby. We like to think like, hey, we don't care about the celebrity endorsement, etc. But I think by and large, people are taken by that. People like seeing certain things in the public and having something of a similar kind or something of the same sort. And I think that does work with, when Breitling was at its best, people were always obsessing about, John Travolta's collection and what Seinfeld had on the wrist. And
that's right.
So it does matter at some level, at the level of popular culture at least, who else recognizable is wearing these watches. And when it's a smaller brand, you get it on the wrists of 2 or 3 people who seem to have connected to the brand at some level. You know, I think it can ring hollow sometimes when you know that this guy, like Erling Haaland, for example, the Norwegian striker who plays for Manchester City,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he was wearing all these different watches, you know, a lot of Vacheron Constantin, etc., and suddenly he became a Breitling ambassador.
This is right.
I mean, that's harder to buy into than
Yeah, organic, yeah.
you know, than, for example, John Travolta back in the day, right? You know, he did actually fly planes, and he did have that sort of emotional and personal connection to Breitling as a pilot's watch. So you could, as a customer, you could feel like, you know, there was some level of authenticity to it, even though we're not stupid, right? You know, we know that there's marketing placement. We know that there are ambassadorships. We know that people are being paid, being given free watches, this or that. But when that relationship clicks just enough for you to momentarily suspend your disbelief, it does work. It does work.
Panerai with like Arnold and Sylvester Stallone. Another great example.
Yeah, that's a great, perhaps the best example, in fact, because those two guys, you know, at the level of popular imaginary, really put Panerai and even a certain aesthetic of an oversized watch on the map like nobody else, and it did fit their, like, you know, 80s action hero persona. It fit proportionally, it fit in terms of the aesthetic, it fit even in terms of the founding mythology of the brand, with, like, you know, Italian frogmen, you know, who were engaged in these, like, you know, that crucial and very dangerous missions, like, you know,
the real life action heroes.
Yeah, so it's you know, when, like you said, when certain dots can be connected, where, you know, like, you know, yes, there is a financial transaction, yes, there's some exchange of cash, you know, yes, there's that side. But if that story can be told still in a compelling way, it still sells. Like, we might not like it at some level, you know, we might feel a certain way about celebrity endorsements, but when it works, it does give some cachet to the brand on a mainstream level. Dark Child says, greetings from Vienna, our Ukrainian friend. Nice to see you, man. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, in 50 years, will vintage Apple Watches be collectibles? Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, you know that early Macintosh computers are you know, they are collectible in their own way. You know, I'm sure there are people who would pay some sort of premium. I don't exactly know the market, so don't kill me if it's actually an insane premium, but, you know, to the first iPod, you know, if it's an unopened package or something, I'm sure that's
where it is.
Yeah, I don't, again, I don't know exactly how much these things cost, but I can, you know, I know that it will command something. That being said, though, it's not, it can't, by definition, I think some of these products, especially when it comes to iPod, iPhone, Apple Watch, because they are made to become obsolete in a very discrete cycle. I mean, you know, I'm not making a grand revelation here. This is planned obsolescence is basically one of the founding principles of industrial capitalism, right? You make things so that they will perish, so that they would be replaced in after just a couple of years, ideally, or a little bit longer, so that the customer is obliged to buy, renew, update, upgrade every so often.
And really the difference too, like to compare to, like, let's say a quartz watch, for example, servicing a battery is kind of, it's not a big to do, you just change out the battery. However, in a cellular device like a phone, or even like especially like an Apple Watch, it's actually quite a process to actually take it apart, remove the battery, put a new one in. So you do run the risk with those devices of, the battery more or less leaking and going bad, no longer holding a charge for the device to be fully functional. So I would say, yeah, like a completely unopened, plastic sealed Apple Watch original, or maybe like an Hermes version of it, so you're probably lower production there. That first series, I could see having a collectability, but there's kind of some things to be mindful of in just simply storing it, from like that battery standpoint. They're not really like exactly what Brandon was saying is, they're fast fashion. It's not really designed to last as other collectibles.
And I think what you said there is important in underlining that kind of packaged, unblemished, kind of untouched version of it. So it's like, I think it's more in the realm of collectability, where certain versions of it in untouched condition could be collectible, like certain kinds of baseball cards and action figures, etc. But an Apple Watch will not ever be collectible in the way of a mechanical watch, or even, like Basil said, quartz watch, right? Where you have, in fact, a certain inherent horological or an aesthetic value that is connected to some tradition of craftsmanship, some measure of limited production, right? Because when you, again, even if you would count all these Apple Watches in the series as a single generation, even if it were made to last, the numbers you are talking about compared to the mechanical watches and the kind of volume and quantity that is produced there, it's immeasurable. It's not even comparable. So you are failing at that aspect of craftsmanship. You are failing at that aspect of some sort of uniqueness, limited fashion, some sort of unique cool factor, right? You're talking about a mass marketed, mass produced product. And then add to that the fact that these things are literally made to be chucked away in a couple of years. They will never be collectible in the same way that mechanical watches are collectible. Again, like Basil is saying, packaged versions of certain kinds of releases, first versions, would be collectible in the same way that the original iPod is collectible, like
Right.
the original Macintosh is collectible. But yeah, not in the way that vintage mechanical watches are
And
collectible.
with the Apple Watches, they all, for the most part, with the exception of like I guess the Pro, which looks a little different, they all kind of look the same, right? Like it's all that kind of that same construction, and really what you're getting is like it's really what you're buying what the watch can do, not really its aesthetics. It's just more of it what it can compute. And that what it's able to compute becomes obsolete pretty quick. And the next one will compute the same exact way and better. So.
Ali Reza, I will go back to some of the questions asked above, but of course I will prioritize this super chat, which is good. I made a similar comment, right? I said I was going to try to take on Basil, but I'm kind of intimidated by this new look. So Ali Reza is saying, I don't know what's happening or when Basil's became a Russian crime boss. I think he has the right genes. He doesn't have to go all the way to Eastern Europe. I think he can be another kind of a crime boss, part of another kind of family. But okay, let's go with this. But is young Brando making a good case, or is he gonna get knocked off? Well, I mean, I've already admitted as much. I give up. I'm not challenging Basil. I'll take an easier opponent. Thank you for the super chat, Ali.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Awesome Pawan was saying, I want to buy a Seiko Urushi dial with weird subdials, Dr. Bob's Nightmare, tree sap lacquer. That's cool. It takes skilled hands, real craftsmanship. Yeah, Seiko did come up with a new Urushi dial watch. I don't exactly remember where I saw it, so I can't recall it immediately. But you did have, this is the Chrono Tokyo watch that you just moved on from Basil, a watch that used an Urushi lacquered dial. In the limited time you owned it, I guess it's not that limited because it was almost a whole year, I think.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that particular watch? Do you have it on your Instagram that we can pull it up?
It should. Yeah, it's definitely on there. And yeah, what I like what they did, kind of what makes it like special, right? It's an art of taking paper and actually pressing it into the lacquer to give it a bit of an effect. So should be just a little ways down, but yeah, there's definitely some photography of the watch on my Instagram there. Oh, there it is. There's a little bit of it. Boom.
That was a cool dial.
Yeah, I like that. It is a very interesting dial. I like how the numerals are kind of set in a way where it's all facing kind of center, versus the traditional like where it'd be, the 6 would be kind of right side up. It all kind of faces center, which I always was kind of attracted to, in my shopping for it.
Cool. Treble was asking, and I'm entertaining this question for two reasons. Well, at least he's not a United fan, so that's one advantage. I like the Spurs, but City's cool. He says, are there any nice quartz watches? There are plenty, but he has a particular mandate for us here. I want something to play golf in, but please don't say G-Shock. So that's what I was saying. I appreciate that he's saying no G-Shock, but I want a quartz watch. I have some, look, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know how appropriate some of my suggestions will be for the game. But I do have some ideas on the other side of the spectrum aesthetically from G-Shock. But I was wondering, Basil, do you have something in mind, as a nice quartz watch that could be worn every day?
The Breitling, I believe it's the Endurance. That's a watch that is actually something that I looked at, considering a watch that would kind of be suitable for athletic activity and not one that I'd worry of as far as like any kind of like movement issues. And they come in a lot of cool colors.
Yeah, this one, right?
Yeah, yep. There's also, yeah, there's a lot of different like strap, and usually the that little rehot will match whatever strap you get.
It's funny that there are like university editions, University of Alabama, it said Princeton earlier. Yeah, they lost me as a customer with the Princeton one, but it's okay.
Ooh.
We won't hold it against them. Now, I mean, you have suggested something quite reasonably rugged, and still very different aesthetically from the G-Shock. I honestly, I don't know of anything rugged in the same way. I don't know how appropriate these would be for a game of golf, but I think they're otherwise quite reliable. And I have in mind some of the Mecha Quartz chronographs that were released in the last few years again. Man, I'm having a little bit of difficulty here. Okay, right here. Someone has the jokes there in the chat. I'm surprised that University of Alabama graduate can buy a Breitling. Why not, man? What do you mean?
A lot of them sign really good pro contracts in football, right? Come
on. Yeah, so this is very different on on a different end of the aesthetic spectrum when it comes to also the Breitling Endurance too, but certainly the G-Shock. But a lot of these hybrid pieces that basically have quartz timekeeping and mechanical operation for the chronographs. That's the general gist of a Mecha Quartz movement. Dan Henry is another brand that has pieces like that. More recently, Furlan Marie has come out with mechanical chronographs and also time-only automatic pieces as well. That's a different story. I'm talking about the Mecha Quartz chronographs that are, relatively affordable, right? Right around $600, $555 in Swiss francs. They have a few different styles, all of which are very much vintage inspired. This is my favorite, basically. I kind of like the colors, the sector look of the dial, and the pulsometer. That's a little bit different. I said Dan Henry, that's another brand. Again, they might look a a little more precious compared to a G-Shock or the Breitling Endurance. But they won't break the bank, even if they might break. Yeah, Dan Henry is even cheaper, under 300 for some of these versions here. I think what was the other one that's Undone? Was that a watch brand?
I know the name. Yeah, there's definitely an Undone watch brand.
Yeah. I think Undone has some quartz operated pieces. So those are three brands that come to mind. And Undone has a more broad and sportier look, and some quartz pieces, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think they do a little mix from what I can recall.
Dr. Bob says, I put my G-Shock on, guys. I'll take you with me while I walk the dog. Hey, man, man, that's the bane of my existence now. I really, really want to get a dog. And I feel like, it's one of those things. I feel like it would be great for me going through this, professional transition as well. But it's also a lot of time, and I do want to get a puppy and bond with it and whatever. Treble says, not many United fans here in Manchester, which is funny, right? Because they would blame, usually United fans blame Manchester City fans of being newcomers and whatever else. Funny enough, because they were so successful in the Premier League era, I think Man United have globally more fans than they have locally, whereas City has a lot of fans who have been there through thick and thin. And, I think they truly deserve the kind of success they have experienced in the recent years. I mean, yeah, I wish, can we have one of those titles, treble, in our trophy room? Just one of the Premier League titles that you have won in the last 7 to 10 years. That would be nice. There's also a sky blue version, and that's obviously a reference to City's colors. I think there was earlier. I was your friend Mikey, my friend Mikey. Look at these two. Good evening, fellas. What you guys wearing? I think it's nice. We my beard is coming along as well, so we do form a good duo. So Basil just unboxed this piece with me, the video that preceded this. I'll share the link very quickly. I haven't even changed the title yet, but this is a 90s re-edition of the Carrera 64. So this is the unboxing video. Treble says, sorry, I had a season ticket for decades and I'm enjoying every title. Good for you guys, man. Now that you have won the Champions League 2, I think you have truly established yourself. I don't know. I don't know how that feels. I don't know how that feels to win for a change. But hey, I like the manager that we have these days.
Winning is good.
Yeah. Almost. Show it again.
Oh, back there again.
I'm exactly like that. Yeah, this is what I'm wearing. The OG, the watch that started it all.
There it is.
Speaking of the late 60s, 5513 Rolex Submariner. But yeah, I'm glad Basil shared it here. You know, that's my aesthetic, and I do love that silver dial. I think it looks great on that perforated strap, but you know, on a different kind of occasion with a different kind of outfit, you know, with a simple black calfskin or, you know, gator strap, that would be a great dress watch too, I think.
Yeah, no, it's definitely super versatile, and yeah, it's something I've seen, done many different ways, and even like metal bracelets too on it, which kind of give an interesting aesthetic. Some people have even kind of worked in some of the newer bits with like a deployant clasp from some other tags, so it's pretty cool. Really, you know, very much there. Bless you.
I was just getting another water as well. Treble says, "I wear my Explorer while walking the dog." That's a good dog walking watch as well. You forgot Timex Indiglo. Look, I mean, Timex Weekender can be a good course watch to wear, except I don't know what kind of crystal those pieces use. I feel like it's not a sapphire crystal that Timex uses for the Indiglo and Weekender, pardon me, kind of watches. So it might not be ideal when they crack and etc. Splint. I don't know. I feel like it can be messy and potentially painful, because I've worn Timex Weekenders to spice things up. You know, when I just had this, when I had this and my GMT root beer. You know, when I was between one or two watches, I was kind of switching things up with Timex Weekender, and I kind of, yeah, I don't know what material they use for their crystal, but I'm almost sure that it was neither acrylic nor sapphire, and it felt like almost glass. Although I have to double check anyway, but I wouldn't recommend them for genuine sporting activity, honestly. Treble says to be there in Istanbul was wonderful. Oh wow, you actually went to the final. That's amazing. That's great. Yeah, the Champions League final was in Istanbul when City won it in 2023. Last year it was in London when Real Madrid won it. In 2022, when Real Madrid won it again, where was it then? I kind of forget. That was in Paris, Stade de France. I didn't remember that at all. Didn't recall. What was this Seiko Urushi thing? I want to double check that. I think it was like a new Presage watch, right?
What was that?
Seiko's version of the Urushi dial. Is it Is it this one, guys, that you were talking about? I mean, I don't know if these are pictures or rendering. It looks a little more one-dimensional than the Chrono Tokyo piece that Basil had.
Really cool though. Yeah, I haven't really seen too much of that.
Yeah, but I like, I do like a green dial. So yeah, this is the one they were talking about. I kind of, sometimes I get, I mean, I used to get much more irritated with busy dials, but these days, I kind of let it all go. So I kind of like all of these different things that are going on the dial as well. I'm guessing this is the date and this is the day, and that's a power reserve indicator. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I guess it's just getting just familiar with it, just getting used to just recognizing your different complication within the dial and it becoming a little more of a more useful than just chaos.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think, not that I think of it, especially when you're making a unique dial, don't you want to give as much negative space as possible?
Yeah, give it that real estate to really be the star. No, I get that.
So when I think of it, I do now think there's a little too much going on for my taste. But I would love to see it in person because I'm sure there's a different and probably more multi-dimensional quality to that green. See,
Yeah, a lot. I could see it showing really well, like in person. Sometimes photos doesn't always give you that full effect.
Awesome Pawan says the same thing. I want a basic three-handed Urushi dial. Well, for that, you might need to go to Chrono Tokyo. They do release yearly editions that incorporate Urushi dials sometimes.
Yeah, I believe there's like mine, for example, that without the actual markers too. I think it even really. Yeah, I think we might be onto it.
Yeah, look at these different variations they have had in the past, and these were made for their boutique and can only be bought from there. So you can actually, I think, still buy these if you ever make it to Tokyo in the near future. I think these are some beautiful pieces. And in the past, they also had of course, the one that our own Basil had. These are all three-handers. And yeah, I think these can be found on the secondary markets without an insane amount of premium, if you're patient enough, at least.
Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that.
I can't wear a 38 millimeter watch 8-inch. Well, that's a problem I don't have. Your friend Mikey says that sub looks dope. The hint of gray is nice. Been wanting a Tudor Black Bay 58s. It looks good both on bracelet and straps. I've always been a huge fan of Tudor's aesthetic. Sometimes some of their watches can be a little too thick for my taste. I think Black Bay 58 is just perfect. Black Bay 54 is great as well. Again, hitting the right notes, not only in terms of how the dial and the case looks, but just how the watch feels on the wrist. Because one of the things that I like about vintage Rolexes are actually how delightfully light they are on the wrist. That makes them so much easier to wear, and so much fun to wear from my perspective than contemporary Rolexes. I've never been quite in tune with modern Rolex in the same way that I appreciate Tudor. I'm a big fan of the bronze, Black Bay bronze, Black Bay 58 bronze. I'm almost sure that I'm gonna end up getting one of those at some point, probably quite soon. But then again, I've been talking about it for 2 years now almost. So,
I recall it coming up. Yeah, I think it's just waiting for that right opportunity, and usually they approach themselves when you're not really always anticipating them. So, but with internet and patience, you have a lot on your side.
Honestly, there was actually, I have seen, I used one very recently that was a great deal and didn't look all that patinated. I'm gonna send you the link on private chat.
Yeah.
Just because I might just change my mind and pull the trigger or something. So I'm not gonna share it in the chat right away. But check that out, and it's quote, at that price point, quite a significant amount off from the retail price. And it doesn't look unseemly, to be honest. Because obviously one of the, speaking of what I Heart Maldives was saying earlier about having your name on the paper, one of the great things about the bronze is the way it patinates uniquely depending on how you use it day by day. So maybe this is one watch that that is ideally bought at retail. And I think now they I don't know if I remember right, but now they made it available through the website as well, I think. Although the website seems to say no. It's been a boutique exclusive, but in Southern California, we are kind of blessed when it comes to that, because there are two, basically. There's the one in Westfield Century City that's, I believe, operated by West Time, and then there's one in Costa Mesa in the South Coast Plaza that's operated by Tourneau.
Yeah, Tudor's. Yeah, there's a number of Tudor dealers. I find that between Tudor and Rolex, they're usually kind of almost together most of the time, but there's quite a few.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, they started they started opening a lot of self-standing.
Self-standing, right. No, that's true.
There are a few different opinions there. Treble says, I like the bronze, but not the smell. I kind of agree with that. I have a bronze ring that I wear, on a pretty regular basis, not every day. yeah, I don't. I'm not a huge fan of how it stains my finger. I like the. I actually like the look. The kind of subtle patina it takes. That being said, that yeah, when I take it off, until I either have to wash it, kind of very, very closely, or it doesn't go away until I take a full shower. It
Right.
does really leave a stain. I'm hoping, or I'm guessing that this watch won't leave that on your wrist right away with the bracelet. I'm sure the bracelet is probably finished off in a way that it doesn't stain you, although I can't be sure because I haven't had the watch, not yet anyways. Um, when it comes to the patina, I think it has a lot to do with the alloy, with the properties of your own skin, and how and where you wear the watch as well. So this Black Bay 58 doesn't age and patinate in either case in the same way that Panerai Bronzo ages. Um, that one gets more green over time.
Yeah.
This
The Aris does the same. I think the Aris has a little more of an aggressive aging.
yeah, this one just darkens for the most part.
That's what
Over
I've
time.
seen. That's kind of what I've, to be fair, seen with the patina. It's more of a like a change of hue than a like the one that I would fear to almost like leave that residue on the wrist.
Mm. Yeah, so my view on it is I like the look overall because it kind of it's less pristine, right? But still has that weight of a heft, let's say, of a precious metal. Yeah, I don't really like how every single alloy ages, but it really depends on which watch, what brand. Um, but there are ways to control that patina. There are things you can use. There are ways you can be more thoughtful about how you wear, where you wear the watch. I think you can be much more intentional about the way it patinates.
Right.
It doesn't have to be ugly, and when it does get to a level where you don't like it, you can polish it back, and I don't think that has to be an entirely professional process either. And remember, this was part of their so-called podium series. So they have one in silver as well, although that doesn't come on a full bracelet. And they have the 18 karat. They have the gold one that this year was also introduced with a bracelet
That's
as
right.
well.
Yeah, this year was the year that they launched the full gold. You can get the one on strap for a really good price under retail.
On the secondary market, right?
Secondary, yeah. To the point of it, I would almost warrant like how much the premium would be for like the actual gold bracelet. If Tudor might make it a little trickier though than they make other bracelets and accessories. Though I bet with that gold.
Yeah. I mean, already also on the lists, right? The full bracelet version is 32,100,
Right.
which doesn't make sense to me at all, especially as a vintage guy. There's so much gold sub you can get at that price point.
Big time, yeah.
On the secondary market, this is 18. So, the premium they ask is basically more than $14,000
Right.
for the bracelet. That's That's a lot.
Yeah, the gold case, will come with the leather strap, and also they throw in a NATO too.
Right now that I think of it, wait a second. How much difference between? Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna. Okay, yellow gold Daytona on bracelet, 41,200.
Sure.
On Oyster Flex,
Probably not going to be that much different. I mean, a little bit, but not that what we saw from Tudor.
I wonder, honestly, some people in this space are like 10,000 basically.
Mm-hmm.
Rolex charges 10,000 premium between the Oyster Flex and full gold bracelet.
And they are giving you a nice big clasp, but still, I mean,
yeah, that's handsome. I like it.
everybody swears by that Oyster Flex.
I've always been kind of charmed by it. I wasn't put off, even though it replaced in the lineup.
Yeah. It replaced the leather strap.
Right. So you would assume with my personality I would resent it for that, but I just thought it was a cool look, an interesting idea. I like the fact that they at least offered a few different sizing options, and that it actually does mold to your wrist. It's not just a simple rubber band with the titanium inserts and everything. It's a little more durable than the average rubber strap. But I actually realized that I really appreciate it as an aesthetic. It really tones things down from a full gold bracelet watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it versatile. It makes it sporty. Yeah.
Which, from my perspective, I mean, it's a little too much for me. Like, I don't have anything against gold watches per se, but gold watch on a gold bracelet to me is something of a limiting look, if anything. I don't know, from my perspective, from my personality, from my taste, from my lifestyle, I can't think of many occasions where I could wear a full gold watch on a bracelet, on a matching bracelet. Whereas I could think of wearing an Oyster Flex piece on a day-to-day basis. So I like it on the Daytona. I certainly like it on the Yachtmaster as well.
It's one of the few innovations that Tudor didn't start with and get trickled into Rolex, right?
Right. That's true. Yeah, for once.
Mm-hmm.
For once they kept something for themselves. Yeah, I think this is a good look. Dawson Pawan says Chopard and IWC has gold watches for under 10K pre-owned. Oh yeah, I mean, for sure you can. There's a lot of interesting gold pieces that you can get for much much cheaper than that. I mean,
Yeah, if you're not too selective on case size too, especially.
I mean, exactly, right? You know, there's a whole wide world, you know, when it comes to like vintage dress pieces by Vacheron and even AP time only, um, like 31 to 33 millimeters case size, white gold or yellow gold. Um, there's a lot you can pick up still around, you know, 7, 8 up to $10,000, but it's a very different aesthetic, of course, than what we have been talking about here, at least in the last segment. Yeah, earlier your friend Mikey was saying, I like the gray NATO, but it will never fit right on me. You know, it's a particular shade of gray that I settled on. But honestly, it just got better with age. You know, and I do wash it like about every 2 weeks or so. So it gets softer. It just gets better with wear if you have a decent NATO strap, because it also gets softer, you know, which is a problem that you have a lot of times with cheaper nylon NATO straps. So with time, with wear, they get softer, a little bit nicer to wear as well. So I like a nice NATO strap. I know we are, you know, on the other swing of the pendulum for now. You know that at some point everyone put everything on a NATO strap, and nowadays everyone thinks they're nasty. I, I know. Soon enough, it will swing back, um, and things will become cool again. But it's always better to develop your own taste and stick to it. Um, and if the gray NATO is not for you, that's fine. You know, I think that's the other thing. You know, it's nice to watch match. You know, the colors of the watch. I like this because, like, you know, the kind of the bezel is a shade of gray. Um, the dial itself is like a little bit faded out, so the strap kind of complements that. um, I have a lighter gray NATO strap that I wear with my Explorer 2, for example, which I feel is a great complement to the polar white dial. um, I had kind of like a khaki brown that I would sometimes put together with the 1675-3, the root beer. Um, yeah, I like playing around with those kinds of color, but if nothing else, just a black one would work with just about any watch that you think looks good on the NATO. You don't have to be that picky and matchy with the colors either. But a gray NATO strap, on a dive watch, it's hard to go wrong.
And think about it, if it's good enough for James Bond, it's good enough for us, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know much about that rule, honestly. I think that's an exceptional character, right? It's not everyone can pull things off that James Bond, the fictional character, pulls off. That's for sure. And the Awesome Pawan actually has a great point here, because NATO straps are usually marketed as being casual and sportier, and even in a way maybe summery at some level. But he's right. Actually, especially the cheap ones, can really stick to your skin in the sun. It's not the most pleasant wear. I think some nice rubber straps are actually great to wear. The summer strap that I really like wearing is let me see if I can quickly find this. I should have never switched this out from my Type 20. That's what I used to wear, and it was just the best. Because it was kind of like the calfskin look on the outside and rubber on the inside. Oh, I think it's actually called James. Okay. So it's this. It's made by the Austrian brand Hirsch. And it has this waterproof treated leather on the outside with contrast stitching and rubber on the inside. And it's really comfortable to wear. Feels good, waterproof, genuine, sporty strap. It's kind of like they make classic dress shoes, but give them like Vibram, like rubber soles.
Yeah.
It's
nice fusion of the two.
It's a similar aesthetic. Gives a similar look as well.
I like that.
So from the outside, it mostly looks like just another calfskin strap, but it wears like your best sporty strap, period. Like the best kind of rubber strap. It doesn't stick because of all those channels and texture. It breathes nicely. It feels good against your skin. I'm not a particularly allergic person when it comes to my skin. When it comes to my, eyes and nose and whatever else, that's another story. But yeah, I've been really happy with these, and it's not. Again, I don't know how much I paid for it. It wasn't this website that I bought it from, but it's not prohibitively expensive either. Sometimes some straps can cost a little too much, and you can you can match them with either a simple buckle or a déployant clasp. They have different lug widths, different sizes, even depending on different lengths. I meant to say, depending on what lug width you choose. But to me, that's the best summer strap, actually.
It seems really versatile.
Yeah, feels really good to wear. Let me see, actually, if I think I should have it at hand. Not on a watch, unfortunately, so it's not gonna be too practical to show.
And I like how it has those kind of that the grooves gives that little bit of that separation, so you don't get that buildup of sweat and just grossness after a long wear.
Okay, I did actually put this back on my Type 20. I don't want to shake it around too much
Gently, right?
because
Get some
the chrono
visibility.
hand is still loose on it. But so this is the aesthetic actually when you look at it from, you know,
Mm.
just like from the face of it.
Yeah, it sits nice between the lugs too.
Yeah, it's kind of perfect actually. But then, you know, you have those rubber insides, and it wears really well.
Mm.
Really, really well.
With that, like that backing too, you probably get a lot more bend to it. It's not like a stiff strap, you know, like a good strap. You know, you shouldn't feel like you're working it to get it around the wrist. So
No, absolutely. It just,
I mean, granted, things break in, but it should just kind of work.
yeah, it kind of takes the shape of your wrist a lot better than the
Yeah,
average.
those grooves kind of probably work as like flex points. It seems, you know, in addition to kind of that little bridge for the kind of the little stoppers for build up.
Yeah, and the hardware that comes with it is quite nice too. I got that Deployon clasp is actually
Yeah.
from the leather strap.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't
Not
sure
the
if that was a
velvet.
carryover. That's cool.
So, and that sits nicely on the wrist too. Although I have to say, you know, that's really a hit or miss. You know, some people swear by Deployon clasps. Others hate them. For me, it's been a mixed bag. You know, sometimes, you know, depending on how the watch itself sits on the wrist and where that clasp hits, you know, it can be very uncomfortable. The watch would constantly, you know, turn face over, and you know,
Right.
whatever. It can be really uncomfortable, and with some, it just sits perfectly. This is one of those. I have had so far better look with the single fold ones rather than the butterfly, you know, that have like kind of you know,
Yeah, right. The double fold, right? Like it, to
I
have
said,
it.
yeah, I said I'm not gonna move it around too much, but for the last one, you know, this is the single fold.
Yep, and then you find it in the loop, right?
Yeah, and then you know, you have the double for.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so
Yeah, as long as that the hardware like bends and doesn't, you know what I mean, kind of poke out at you. Usually, you know, they work.
Daniel Katz Sorto, I'm just hoping through to upvote
Thank
watch
you.
friends. Thank you so much. Yes, please don't forget to upvote. I know a lot of people do that right away and almost religiously, and I appreciate it. And you know, for a small channel, it makes a whole world of difference. So please do it. And if you are just chancing upon the live stream for whatever reason and you're interested in watches, we have content here that is practically on a daily basis. And of course, there are multiple ways of supporting the stream, supporting the channel. YouTube offers you a few different ways, and for sure, there are other options that are linked in the video description as well. Mookie is here, and he says, upvoted. By the way, Mookie, I think Mookie has done something for just about every single channel in this little universe that we have built here, the Archieverse, so-called. But he has done those emojis or whatever they are called that have my face and Certi Danny with it, and that's part of the exclusives you get actually as a member as well. On that note,
The memberships, to be fair, they kind of like pay for themselves, because you get like a free super chat off of it.
that's true.
So
And
what you
you
would
get,
have paid, in a super chat, you basically get it on the flip end. So it always seemed like a kind of like a no-brainer for me.
and obviously you get, speaking of paying for itself, you also get this exclusive access to videos that actually kind of keep the pulse of the market when it comes to certain types of watches, whether it's a particular kind of complication, brand, or a model of a certain vintage. And I always do them, grouping 3 or 4 listings at once, going through some historical detail without being overbearing, some horological details, but also trying to see how you can find the best deals, how you can get most with your hard-earned money. So I think that's those videos that you have exclusive access to also can give you some pointers in terms of buying your next watch, and that's always money in your pocket as well.
Big time. Yeah, that's kind of the way I like to shop. Is I may not have my heart set on particular pieces. I might have brands I like, and just kind of seeing those little just ideas that you kind of run with. Like you get an idea for, let's say, like a certain, like for me, like Parmigiani, right? And then you start looking at other Parmigianis, seeing what's out there, seeing what price works, and sometimes it can kind of introduce you to your next piece. So it's definitely a huge value there.
Great. What do you say, Basil? Should we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm actually it's about almost 2 a.m. at my locale, so I think it's probably a good time to call it an evening.
I think, who is Mookie? Yeah, well, Mookie is a great guy. I think ask him to make me Basil and Alireza emojis as well. Funny enough, it's with the way things are going and with the way he captured my pictures for it as well, it will be exclusively bearded guys, and Danny. That's the masculine assortment that this channel generates.
You have like a Mount Rushmore of men, bearded men.
That's great. Oh my god! Speaking of Mount Rushmore, have you seen that little graphic I did? I'm very bad with these visual skills, but at least the idea was, I thought, cool enough. But the Mount Rushmore of independent watchmakers, where is that? Where was it? Ah.
No, there they are. Thanks. That's awesome.
Guys, feel free to follow me on Instagram as well. This is where I post on a daily basis, sometimes more than once. And this was my Mount Rushmore of independent watchmaking with François Poljon, Kari Voutilainen, Philippe Dufort, and Recep Recepi.
they didn't even have to pass away to appear on the Mount Rushmore. It's pretty good.
Yeah, as you can see, my photoshopping slash visual manipulation skills are on par with some of the best.
There's probably like an app that could put them into like rock format.
Possibly.
Grade the tone. Yeah, looks good. I like it. It has character.
Yeah, as long as you keep things light and do it with a certain sense of humor, I think it's okay.
True that.
Any last words?
No, not really. I just say, just keep enjoying the hobby, everybody. We don't know what the future is going to bring. It's probably going to be a buyer's market for a while. So that's the positives. Hopefully you bought smart, and hopefully you're happy. That's about it.
This is something that our friend St. Peter just shared with me. Gucci Mane, of course, being one of my all-time idols. Let's see what he says here.
See, when I ain't had no money, I still had sauce. Mm-hmm. So if you don't got no sauce, then you're lost. Mm-hmm. But you also get lost in the sauce. You can get how you get lost in the sauce? Bitch, you gonna get lost in the sauce, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I know what you're saying, man. I'm sprinkling sauce, dropping sauce every street, man. Right. You know what I mean? I dig it. Overdose of sauce. That's what it is. No meat, just sauce. When you're born, can you be born with sauce, or do you acquire sauce? No, you can't born with sauce. You get sauce. You get sauce from. How you gonna be born with seasoning? Mm-hmm. You gotta get seasoned. I wasn't born without this sauce. Yeah. I had to acquire this sauce.
Amazing, good man. Look, I mean, I appreciate the family man and kind of the mogul that Gucci Mane has become since he got out of prison for the last time. But this was a different energy out, in 2006. But there are some gems there for sure. And you were saying something similar, Basil, earlier. There are ways that you can get lost in the sauce in the hobby as well. When you can get carried away with some impulse purchases, when you're not patient enough, when you follow certain hypes or trends, it is easy to get lost. And it sounds pedantic, pretentious, and even too witty to say that it takes time to actually build a watch collection that reflects your taste and that doesn't simply represent the catalog of one brand at a certain point in time, or reflects some of the trend, hype, and whatever else is reigning in the market at a particular turn. And I think when you do that, first of all, a lot of different options open up for you. You realize that collecting watches is not about going after one or two hyped up sports watches at a given moment, or the same half dozen brands that have been popular since time immemorial, and especially, let's say, in the last 2 decades. It also opens you up to different kinds of connections as well, right? There's that cliche always that goes around, would you rather talk to someone who is wearing, Rolex or an IWC or a Breitling or just some, Seiko mod? But if you think about that more broadly, more globally, in the sense that, chances are that a watch that's a little more unpredictable, that's a little more off the beaten path, that flies a little more under the radar, but is still a piece that's infused with some sort of horological heritage, probably has a better story to tell, right? There's a chance that to the average person, when you say that's a nice GMT Master or that's a great Submariner, they might say, yeah, my Rolex, whatever, right? It's great, but the chances are that some of these more predictable watches don't always make the best conversation pieces, whether they're on someone else's wrist or on yours. Whereas when you start developing your own taste, there's a particular journey, there's a certain kind of trajectory that you follow to get there. And that gives you something to talk about, that also gives that other person who is wearing a similar kind of watch that is a little bit more different, a little bit more exciting, another story to tell as well. Dr. Bob says, age meat, 100 grams, no sauce. No comment. I kind of know who that refers to. Gilden says, big go up. Yeah, man. Yeah, he's the OG, that he's the OG who put out the first day out genre, coming out of prison and rapping about it. He has, I think, 2 or 3 different first day out songs. Like, he certainly has first day out when he came out of prison in 2006. He has the first day out of the feds. He has one of the best diss tracks of all time, going back to one of the first things we talked about, called Truth, where he has that interlude. Actually, he says, like, for the record, this is not a diss record, it's just the truth. Where he raps about, like, offing some people who came to snatch his chain, which I don't recommend. Of course, we don't condone violence. But yeah, Gucci is a legend for sure. And I appreciate our friend St. Peter for sending me a Gucci clip during a live stream, knowing that I would appreciate it. Thank you, St. Peter. Well, thank you, Basil, first and foremost. Once again, guys, Basil was nice enough to drop in earlier to share the unboxing of his new Hoya Carrera 1964 edition. Basil, of course, has his Instagram, and he has his YouTube channel too. Basil, do you wanna drop the link to your channel in the chat?
Being that I'm on my phone, I probably won't be able to figure it out, honestly.
Okay, I will
It's all cool,
I'll
man.
do it. I'm
It's a work in progress.
let me see.
Thank
I
you,
need
thank
to
you.
go to my subscriptions because I don't know the exact way you spell it, and it doesn't come up. How do you spell yours? At?
It should be just Basil's _ bezels.
At Basil's _ bezels.
I believe so. Should come up that way.
Yes, it did.
Cool. Thank you.
Guys, check it out. I'm a subscriber.
Yeah.
You should be too. And here's the link directly. Oh, Adelza already takes care of these things here too. And yeah, he had a great Hoya today that he shared with us. Classic with the silver dial. Looks beautiful. Guys, please hit the like button on your way out. Again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Basil. Thank you, St. Peter.
Right.
Thank you, Patel Philippe, Mr. Tan, for your super chat, and Ali Reza. Thank you so much. Love you all. I'll see you on the next one. And stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy watches. Until then, take care.